Okay, we go to the 5 transporting points, the Xu points, energetic actions. The 3 reasons for the dynamism of points at the end, beginning of a channel, we have the first, the channel is more superficial. Number 2, change from yin to yang and vice versa. Number 3, second point is in contrast with polarity of channel, water for yang and fire for yin channels. The 5 of the points situated along this section of the channel are particularly important, and they are called the 5 transporting Xu points. They are also coincides with what we call the element points. However, the dynamics of these points is irrespective of their 5-element character. Each of the 5 points occupying the same location along the channel has a name. The names are used are well point, the point at the tips of the fingers or toes, spring point, the second point of the 5. In all cases, it is the second point along the channel. String points, Xu, the third point of the 5. In all cases, it is the third point along the channel, except for the gallbladder channel where it is the fourth. The river point, the Jing, the fourth point of the 5, not always the fourth point along the channel. And next, the C point, He, the fifth point of the 5. In all cases, it is the point at the elbow and knees. These names do not represent literal translation of the Chinese names, but I have preferred them to the literal translation, as this might have created some confusion. The use of the above names is also justified by the analogy of these points with stages in the course of a river found in chapter 1 of the spiritual axis, where it says that at the well points, Qi flows out, at the spring points, it slips and glides, at the spring point, it pours, at the river point, it moves, at the sea point, it enters. So the classic of difficulties gives the same description in chapter 69. The actual meanings of these names are Sajing is well, and the Ying, which is spring of water or pool of water, the Xu, transport, the Jing, to pass through, and the He, to unite or join. The energetic actions of the 5 transporting points, each of the 5 transporting points has a specific energetic action within the channel dynamics that explains the meaning of their names. Well point, this is the point of departure of Qi in the sense outlined above, and therefore applying to both yin and yang channel of arm and legs. At this point, the channel is at its most superficial and thinnest, and the energy changes polarity from yin to yang or vice versa. Because the energy is more superficial and changes polarity, the well point has a particularly dynamic effects than medial. So we have here the centripetal dynamics of well Jing points. Starts with the well, and followed by the spring, then stream, the river, and the yang. So it's going towards the center of the body. The energy as its most unstable state here, so that it can be easily and readily influenced and changed. This explains the use of these points in acute situation, as the well points tend to use to eliminate pathogenic factors quickly in acute conditions. For example, they are used to extinguish internal wind in acute stages of wind stroke. According to the Chinese difficulties, these points have an outward movement, that is, the energy of the channel tends to go outwards in a centrifugal movement of these points. The outward centrifugal tendency of the well point is exploited to eliminate pathogenic factors quickly as they pass through these points. Several examples can be cited, such as the use of the lung 11 for painting, pericardium 9 for painting and heat stroke, heart 9 and small intestine 1 for loss of consciousness, spleen 1 for convulsion, kidney 1 for loss of consciousness and infantile convulsion, LI1 for loss of consciousness, the extra point of Xi-1 situated at the fingertips have action which are equivalent to those of the well points. The Xi-1 points are used to extinguish internal wind in acute conditions, example, acute state of wind stroke. The well points, it is the point of departure of Qi. It is at the fingertips and toe ends, except kidney 1. The channel is most superficial and thinnest. Chains of polarity yin to yang or vice versa. It is dynamic, used to expel pathogenic factors and centrifugal movements. Thank you for your attention.
Source points. We're now on the part 2 of the spiritual axis, chapter 1. The source points of the yang organs do not have a similar function. They do not tonify the yang organs in the same way as the yin source points tonify the yin organs. The yang source points are mostly used in excess patterns to expel pathogenic factors. For example, LI4 is used to release the exterior and expel wind. SI4 can be used to move stagnant liver qi and stop pain in the costal region. Bladder 64 can be used to expel damp heat from the lower burner. GB40 can be used for liver qi stagnation. Stomach 42 can be used to expel wind from the face in facial paralysis. And TB4 can be used to clear gallbladder heat, causing deafness, or to regulate the lesser yang. Of course, the source points of the yang channels can also be used to tonify the relevant yang organs, as chapter 66 of the Classic of Difficulties says. But this is not their main use, and they would not be the best points to do that. To tonify the yang organs, the best points would be to use the lower C points. One exception springs to mind, and that is that of triple burner 4. Chapter 66 of the Classic of Difficulties says that the original qi springs forth from between the kidneys through the intermediary of the triple burner. Therefore, the triple burner is like the emissary of the original qi. As the source points are in direct contact with the original qi, triple burner 4 can be used to strengthen the original qi, and this is used in this way, particularly in Japanese acupuncture. None of the indications from old Chinese texts refer to a tonifying action of this point on the original qi. The other surprising statement is the mention of pericardium 7 as the source point of the heart. This is because in the times when the spiritual axis was written, the heart and pericardium were considered as a single organ. Hence, the constant reference to 5 yin and 6 yang organs. It was only later that the pericardium and heart were split into 2 separate organs to preserve the symmetry of 12 organs and 12 channels. In the yin channels, the source points coincide with the stream points. That is the third point from the distal end of the channel. In the yang channels, the source point follows the stream point and is therefore the fourth point from the distal end of the channel, except for the gallbladder channel, in which the source point is the fifth from the distal end. To summarize the functions of the source points, from the spiritual axis are the source points are in a relationship with the original Qi. The source points can be used in diagnosis as they reflect the state of the original Qi of each yin organ. They are used in the treatment mostly to tonify the yin organs. The source points of the yin organs are more important than those of the yang organs. So, okay, so this is what the spiritual axis considers the source points. Thank you very much for your attention.
Let's have part 2 of the LU connecting points and the ways to use the LU connecting points. Okay. There are 3 ways of using the connecting points. The connecting point can be used in conjunction with the source point of its exteriorly related channel. It can be used on its own, according to symptomatology of the connecting channels themselves, or it can be used to affect the area influenced by the connecting channel. Before discussing these 3 ways of using the connecting points, we must briefly describe the nature and characteristics of the connecting channels themselves. When we say connecting channel, we can refer to 2 separate entities. One is the connecting channel itself, which departs from the connecting point and travels upwards in the pathways briefly described above. The other is the whole area of the body that lies between the main channel and the skin. In the latter case, the connecting channel would be more appropriately described as the connecting channels area because it does not denote an actual channel but a whole part of the body that is irrigated by the connecting channels. Here we have a diagram of the connecting channel and the connecting channels area, showing lung 7 and where the LU channel is and the LU area is. This is a table showing where we can find the channels according to the 4 levels. So at the way level, it's superficial LU, the Coley or way level, and the way level, it's the LU channel. At the Qi level, it's on the main channel, and at the blood level, it's a deep LU channel. So figure 51.5 shows the connecting and main channels areas in section, showing both where the yang and yin areas. So at the superficial LU, at the outermost area, and then in both yang and yin. So next is the LU channel, and then the main channel, and at the core are the deep LU channels. The connecting channels are called lumai. The LU implies the meaning of network. The main channels are called jingmai, and jing implies the meaning of line or route or way. Chapter 17 of the spiritual axis confirms that the connecting channels are horizontal or crosswise. The main channels are in the interior. Their branches are horizontal or crosswise, forming the connecting channels. The connecting channel is the pathway of Qi departing from each connecting point. The connecting channels area is the area of the body crisscrossed by the connecting channels between the main channels and the skin. Thank you for your attention.
Now we continue with the back transporting points, the shoe points, and its uses. The back transporting points can be used in both acute or chronic conditions, but are more frequently used in chronic ones. The back transporting points are yang in character and are especially used to tonify the yang. However, they can be used for deficiency of yin as well. Chapter 67 of the Classic of Difficulties says, yin diseases move to the yang area, yang diseases move to the yin area. The front collecting move points are situated on the yin surface and therefore treat the yang diseases. The back transporting points are situated on the yang surface and therefore treat the yin diseases. According to this statement, the back transporting points should be used to treat yin diseases and the front collecting points, the yang diseases. Yin diseases can mean either diseases of the yin organs or diseases characterized by cold. This would therefore mean that the back transporting points would be used to tonify the yin organs and to warm. Conversely, yang diseases can mean either diseases of the yang organ or diseases characterized by the heat. This would therefore mean that the front collecting points would be used to nourish yin or to clear heat. These guidelines are certainly valid, but they should not be adhered to rigidly. In other words, the back transporting points can also be used to tonify the yin organ and clear heat, and conversely, the front collecting points can be used also to tonify the yang and to warm. Yet another interpretation of yin or yang diseases could be that of chronic or acute diseases, respectively. In this interpretation, the back transporting points would be used for yin diseases, either chronic diseases, and the front collecting points for yang diseases, like acute diseases. Although this rule should not be interpreted rigidly, it is certainly a valid rule which finds a widespread clinical application, that is, using the back transporting points for chronic and the front collecting points for acute diseases. We have here at the table the clinical use of back transporting and the front collecting points. In chapter 67 of the Classic of Difficulties, for the back transporting points, it is used for yin diseases and the front collecting points for yang diseases. For the organs, the back transporting points, it is for the yin or diseases of the yin organs, and for the front collecting points, it is for the diseases of the yang organs. For the heat and cold, the back transporting points is for the cold syndromes to warm the organs, and the front collecting points is for the heat syndromes to clear the heat. The duration of disease, the back transporting points is chronic diseases, and the front collecting points, acute diseases. Another characteristics of these points is that they are used to affect the sense organ of the corresponding organ. For example, bladder 18 is the back transporting points of the liver and can be used for eye diseases. In practice, the back transporting points tend to produce a stronger effect than the front collecting points. They are therefore very useful when the patient feels very tired, exhausted, or depressed. In these cases, if the stomach and spleen are deficient, for example, the use of bladder 20 and bladder 21 will produce a strong tonifying effect. The use of bladder 17, bladder 19, in Chinese called the four flowers, also has a strong tonifying effect on qi and blood. The point bladder 23 should be used in any deficiency of the kidneys, particularly kidney yang, as it strongly tonifies the kidney. Although the back transporting points are mostly used to tonify the organs, they can also be used in excess pattern to expel pathogenic factors. In particular, they can be used to subdue rebellious qi and clear heat. For example, the point bladder 21 can be used to subdue rebellious stomach qi in case of belching, nausea, or vomiting. The point bladder 18 can be used to move stagnant liver qi. Bladder 15 can be used to clear heart fire. Bladder 13 to stimulate the diffusing and descending of lung qi and release exterior. Thank you for your attention.
We will start discussing the front collecting points specifically. So for today, we will talk about lung 1, central residence. Lung 1 is located 6 tun lateral of the anterior midline and approximately 1 tun below lung 2, slightly medial to the lower border of the coracoid process. So how to find lung 1? First, we have to locate lung 2 in the deltopectoral triangle, which is bordered superiorly by the clavicle and laterally by the coracoid process within the deltoid muscle. From there, palpate along the border of the deltoid for 1 tun, and there locate lung 1, slightly medial to the lower border of the deltoid on the thoracic wall, approximately 6 tun lateral to the midline. For orientation, when externally rotating the arm with the elbow flexed at the same time, the coracoid process will remain static, while the minor tuberculum of the humerus will follow the movement. Spleen 20 is also located 6 tun lateral to the midline on the level of the second intercostal space. Located approximately on the same level are REM 20, kidney 26, and stomach 14. Needling of lung 1, 0.5 to 1 tun, obliquely in a cranial approximately 45 degrees and lateral direction towards the coracoid process. Actions or indications. Lung 1 regulates and descends the lung qi, clears heat in the upper burner, transforms phlegm, regulates the water passages. Lung 1 can also move the qi locally and in the sinew channel. Special features. Lung 1 is the front move point of the lung, meeting point with the spleen channel because they belong to the same polarity, the entry point. Lung 1 is important point for disorders of the lung. Lung 1 is mostly used in acute excess patterns of the lungs to disperse fullness from the chest, resolve phlegm from the lungs, and clear lung heat. So it would commonly be used in the later stages of invasion of the lungs by an exterior pathogenic factor when this has penetrated into the interior. In particular, lung 1 is very well indicated for a cough caused by retention of phlegm in the lungs. According to the book, An Explanation of Acupuncture Points by Jing Shred-Chia in 1654, lung 1 is a point where the qi of the lungs gathers as the qi of the channel emerges from the interior. This point can be used to disperse accumulation of lung qi in the chest, causing chest fullness and pain. This is not usually used when the pathogenic factor is still on the exterior. So we only use this when the pathogenic factor has interiorized. This explains why lung 1 is not indicated for sore throat from exterior wind heat invasion. However, since lung 1 has a good effect on making the lung qi descend and stopping cough, it can be used in the early stages of invasion from an exterior pathogenic factor if cough is a prominent symptom. So if you have a patient who has cough and has external wind heat invasion, then you use lung 1. So lung 1 would be needled as a secondary point together with points to release the exterior, like lung 7 and LI4. Lung 1 is important and is an important point for the treatment of whooping cough during its second stage, that is, the lung heat stage. Lung 1 is also effective in treating chest pain deriving from heart blood stasis or retention of phlegm in the chest. In chest pain deriving from heart blood stasis, lung 1 moves the lung qi. Therefore, it helps to move blood in the chest, particularly if combined with pericardium 6. Combined with stomach 40, lung 1 can resolve phlegm retained in the chest by being able to move the qi in the chest. Lung 1 is effective in treating shoulder or upper back pain deriving from a lung channel dysfunction, such as in lung heat, phlegm, or phlegm heat obstructing the lungs. The book, The Simple Questions in chapter 22 says, when the lungs are diseased, qi rebels upwards, causing breathlessness, and there is pain in the shoulders or upper back. Lung 1 can be combined with bladder 13 to tonify the lungs or to eliminate pathogenic factors in both acute and chronic cases. However, the combination of both back and front points is rather powerful. And in most cases, it is not necessary. Generally speaking, the lung 1 would be chosen more for excess and acute conditions, and the back shoe point bladder 13 more for deficiency and chronic conditions. Combined with stomach 36 and spleen 3, lung 1 can be used to tonify the spleen and lungs because they have the same polarity. This combination of points is based on the nature of lung 1 as a meeting point of the lung and spleen channel, as mentioned previously. In 5-element terms, this combination is called filling earth to generate metal. It is useful to compare the functions of the front collecting point of the lungs, lung 1, with those of the back shoe, bladder 13. So lung 1 is mostly for excess patterns, bladder 13 for deficiency patterns. For lung 1, we use this to treat the manifestation mostly, bladder 13 for treating the root. Lung 1 is better for acute cases, bladder 13 for chronic cases. Lung 1 treats pain in the chest, bladder 13 treats pain in the upper back. To summarize, lung 1 is mostly for excess patterns. It disperses chest fullness, resolves phlegm, clears heat, invigorates blood in the chest in combination with pericardium 6, and it is good for upper shoulder and back pain. Thank you very much for your attention.
Let's continue our discussion on the accumulation or Xi points. Particularly today, we'll discuss about lung 6, the biggest hole, or Kongzui. lung 6 is located on the line connecting lung 5 and the cubital crease, and lung 9 on the wrist crease and joints or joint space. 5 tune distal to lung 5 or 7 tune proximal to lung 9. So how do we find lung 6? First, we have to have our arm flexed so that the biceps tendons become more visible. Then we locate lung 5, which is radial to the biceps tendon in the cubital crease, and lung 9 radial to the radial artery on the wrist joint space between the proximal row of carpals and radius or ulna. By moving the hand, the joint space becomes more easily palpable. Next, we find the midpoint of the distance between lung 5 and lung 9 using the spreading hands technique. And lung 6 is located 1 tune proximal to the midpoint of this distance. Pericardium 4 is located more medially between the tendons and distally 1 tune distal to the midpoint of the distance. So here we have an illustration on how to locate lung 6. Okay. So how do we needle lung 6? Needling is done vertically, 0.5 to 1 tune. As for its actions and indications, lung 6 is used to descend lung qi, clears lung heat, cools blood heat, stops bleeding, expels exterior pathogenic factors, and opens the channels. Its a special feature, it's a Xi-cleft point. Here are illustrations on the other points, lung 5, lung 8, and pericardium 4, and also lung 9. Lung 5 is near the biceps tendon. Lung 9 is near the abductor pollicis longus. Lung 8 is near the radial artery. And pericardium 4 is near the tendon of the flexor muscle. Lung 6 is mostly used in acute excess pattern of the lungs, especially for an acute attack of asthma. It is also used to stop bleeding, which is a property of all accumulation points. Like all accumulation points, it treats pain and channel problems, and for this reason, it is an important point for pain along the lung channel in the elbow and the upper arm. In summary of its functions, lung 6 as an accumulation point, it stops pain and is used in acute conditions. It is also used in acute asthma. It clears lung heat and it stops bleeding. Kongzui or lung 6 is the Xi-cleft point of the lung channel. The Xi-cleft point are where the qi and blood, which flow relatively superficially along the channels from the chingual points, gather and plunge more deeply. The Xi-cleft point in general are indicated in the treatment of acute conditions and pain. Thus, the Xi-cleft points of the yin channels have an additional action of treating disorders of blood. Kongzui or lung 6 is an important point for both for acute diseases of the lungs and for disorders of blood. Kongzui is particularly indicated for attack by exterior pathogenic wind heat or wind dryness, which number 1 is lodged in the superficial layer and obstruct the normal functioning of the pores, giving rise to febrile diseases with absence of sweating. And number 2, penetrate the lung zang and channel, giving rise to acute cough and wheezing, swelling and pain of the throat and loss of voice. In modern clinical practice, however, the principal use of this point is in the treatment of acute cough, wheezing, or asthma of any etiology. As the lung channel's Xi-cleft point, Kongzui or LU6 is also particularly indicated for all kinds of bleeding from the lung, whether due to wind dryness, wind heat, phlegm heat, liver-lung disharmony, or iron deficiency. Finally, Kongzui or LU6 is indicated for obstruction of qi along the lung channel with such symptoms as severe pain of the elbow and upper arm, difficulty in flexing and extending the fingers, and inability to raise the arm above the head. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, we go to the gathering points. The meeting for 13 complete Shang. The location is in the anterior and inferior to the free end of the 11th rib, approximately 1 tune superior to the umbilicus. To locate, the quick method is to ask the patient to press their flexed elbow into 90 degrees against the lateral aspect of the thorax, and the tip of the olecranon will be pointing to the free end of the 11th rib. So LV13 can then be located on its anterior and inferior border, or place the hand on the upper abdomen and with gentle pressure palpate along the lower border of the rib cage until you feel the free end of the 11th rib just superior to the umbilicus. To locate LV13 on its anterior and inferior border. Located on approximately the same level, 1 tune superior to the umbilicus, are REN9 on the midline and stomach 24, 2 tune lateral to the midline. GB25 is located more laterally and inferiorly at the free end of the 12th rib. So sa needling, 0.5 to 1 tune vertically or better obliquely in a lateral direction. Caution, peritoneum, hypertrophied organs, right. Sa right, we have the liver, and sa left, we have the spleen. Action, indications, it harmonizes the liver and the spleen, regulates liver qi, especially in the middle and lower border, strengthens the spleen, opens the channel. Special features, it is the front move point of the spleen, meeting point of the Dao-mai and the GB channel. U meeting point of the Sang organs. LV13 is very much used whenever liver qi stagnates and invades the stomach and spleen, preventing spleen qi from ascending, resulting in loose stools, diarrhea, and abdominal distension, and stomach qi from descending, resulting in retention of food, belching, and fullness in the epigastrium. The use of this point will promote the smooth flow of liver qi and eliminate stagnation, as well as strengthen the spleen. It is therefore the main point to use whenever liver and spleen are not harmonized. Typically, the pulse is wiry on the left and weak on the right. Needled with reinforcing method, this point can also be used to tonify stomach and spleen. If moxa is used in addition, it can tonify and warm the spleen in deficiency of spleen yang. Now we go to the LV13 summary of functions. It promotes the smooth flow of liver qi and harmonizes the liver and spleen, the hypochondrial distension, pain in the ribs, abdominal distension, and pain, diarrhea, undigested food in the stools, borborygmi, constipation. Tonifies stomach and spleen. If moxa is used in addition, it can tonify and warm the spleen yang. Xiangmen LV13, located midway between the middle and lower jaw, is both a point of the liver channel and the front move point of the spleen. The term mu means to gather or to collect the front move points are where the Qi of the Zhongfu gathers and concentrates on the anterior surface of the body. Xiangmen liver 13 is therefore an important point to harmonize the relationship both between the liver and spleen and between the middle and lower jiao, with emphasis on disorders of the abdomen and intestine. According to standards of patterns and treatment, the essence of the five sang is all transported from the spleen. As the origin of the postnatal qi, the spleen and stomach are considered to play a central role along the Zhongfu, transforming and distributing the essence of food and drink throughout the body. For this reason, the spleen may be said to dominate the sang and the stomach the fu. The close relationship of Xiangmen liver 13 to the spleen, therefore, is further reflected in its status as the Wei meeting point of the sang, in the same way the Song 1, Ren 12, the front move point of the stomach, is also the Yu meeting point of the Fu. The liver tends to excess patterns and the spleen to deficiency. Liver-spleen disharmony may originate either from the liver when qi stagnation aggressively invades, obstructs, and suppresses the transportation and transformation function of the spleen, or from the spleen when the spleen qi deficiency is unable to resist the encroachment of exuberant liver qi. This process is reflected in saying, anger is hard and the Zhongfu are soft. That is hard easily endures what is soft, and by Sang Jing Shu observation, if anger occurs during or after eating, it injures the stomach and spleen. The origin of liver-spleen disharmony, therefore, may be either an excess condition of the liver or a deficient condition of the spleen, or a combination of the two. One characteristic of this disharmony is the function fluctuation in severity, of symptoms with changes in the emotional state and the tendency of either liver qi stagnation or spleen deficiency to predominate at different times. Xiangmen liver 13, which is able to both to regulate the liver qi and to tonify the spleen, is the main point on the abdomen to treat all gradation of liver-spleen disharmony, giving rise to symptoms such as propensity to anger, distension, and pain of the abdomen, borborygmus, diarrhea, and loss of appetite. The diarrhea due to liver-spleen disharmony is distinguished by two main characteristics. The first is that the diarrhea is often preceded by distension and pain, both of which are relieved by after passing stools. The second is that diarrhea frequently alternates with constipation, for which this point is also indicated. This pattern, frequently encountered in irritable bowel syndrome and premenstrual bowel disorders. Xiangmen liver 13 may also be used for spleen disharmony without liver complications, or liver disharmony without spleen complications. Through its action of fortifying the spleen, it is indicated for weariness of the limbs, emaciation, injury to the stomach and spleen from overindulgence in eating, and diarrhea containing undigested food. By resolving liver qi stagnation, it is able to treat esophageal constriction, fullness of the chest, focal distension, pain of the lateral costal region, and constipation. If liver qi stagnation leads to stasis of blood, there may be abdominal masses, and in terms of Western medicine, enlargement of the liver and or spleen. If liver qi stagnation transforms to fire, there may be agitation and heat with a dry mouth, mad walking, and propensity to anger. If the liver is deficient, there will be a propensity to fear. If liver qi invades the stomach or lungs and impairs their descending function, there will be vomiting, cough, or dyspnea. Through its dual action and the liver and spleen, Xiangmen LV13 is also able to drain dampness or damp heat from the middle or lower jaw with such symptoms as jaundice and frequent urination with turbid white discharge. Liver channel is interiorly exteriorly coupled with the gallbladder channel, which controls the sides of the body and facilitates turning and bending. Xiangmen LV13, a meeting point of the liver and gallbladder channel, is located close to the waist and lumbar region and is indicated inability to turn and bend the waist. The Greater Compendium of Acupuncture and Moxibustion recommends Xiangmen LV13 for cold and pain of the lumbar spine, while Xu Shi Miao in 1,000 Ducat formulas is more specific and recommends it for cold and painful lumbar spine in men. Finally, LV13 is indicated for the pattern of running piglet qi arising from severe stagnation of qi. According to the essentials from the Golden Cabinet, running the piglet disorder arises from the lower abdomen. It rushes up to the throat with such ferocity that the patient feels he is close to death. It attacks and then remits. It is brought about by fear and pride. Running piglet qi primarily arises when stagnant liver qi transforms to heal or when kidney yang deficiency leads to accumulation of cold in the lower jaw. In both cases, qi is violently discharged and rush upward along the penetrating vessel. In clinical practice, running piglet qi may be encountered in a number of variants, all involving a rushing sensation, usually upwards along the trunk, back, or limbs. It is usually accompanied by feeling intense anxiety. Thank you for your attention.
Let's now discuss acupuncture for chronic fatigue syndrome. So, treatment principles and points. Tonify the qi. We use stomach 36, spleen 3, Ren 12, Ren 6, bladder 20, bladder 21, bladder 13. To tonify the yang, the points to tonify the yang are the same as above, except with moxa. Tonify the kidney yang. We use bladder 23, Ren 4 with moxa, kidney 3, kidney 7. Moxa is applicable. To nourish blood, we use liver 8, Ren 4, stomach 36, spleen 6. To nourish kidney yin, Ren 4, kidney 3, kidney 6. To treat muscle ache and ache in the upper arms, which is present in chronic fatigue syndrome, we use the following points. So we have LI15, LI14, and triple burner 13. For ache in the lower arms, LI10, triple burner 7, and triple burner 5. For ache in the upper legs, stomach 31, stomach 32. For ache in the lower legs, stomach 36. Now let's go to identification of patterns and treatment. To treat chronic fatigue syndrome properly, we have to be able to distinguish whether the predominant aspect is the pathogenic factor, that is the excess pattern, or the deficiency of the body's qi, that is the deficiency pattern. Of course, almost all cases are characterized by a mixture of excess of dampness and deficiency of qi and or yin. For this reason, to treat CFS, one nearly always needs to combine tonification with expelling and expelling with tonification. However, one of these conditions is always predominant, and treatment should be clearly aimed at either clearing a pathogenic factor or tonifying the body's qi. If we tonify when a pathogenic factor is predominant, or if we clear when a deficiency is predominant, the patient will definitely be worse. Another important consideration is that every effort should be made to treat any new infection the patient might develop during the course of treatment. This is because a new acute viral infection, such as cold or influenza, can often undo the work of weeks of treatment. For this reason, it is a good idea to give the patient a supply of Yin Chow 1, Lonicera forsythia pill to take at the first signs of an infection with symptoms like shivering, temperature, sore throat, aches in the muscles, headache, and general lassitude. Let us now examine the treatment of the various conditions with which CFS can manifest itself. The patterns to be discussed are, for full, under the full category, we have dampness in the muscles, heat lurking in the interior, lesser yang pattern, and yin fire. Under the empty category, we have qi deficiency, yang deficiency, blood deficiency, and yin deficiency. Thank you very much for your attention.